previous interviews, you've spoken about the autobiographical inspiration behind Mustache and wanting to make a film that is both universal and specific to your unique point of view as a Pakistani Muslim growing up in the Bay Area, as well as your own discovery of performance art and theater that perhaps mirrors Ilyas's discovery of art that leads him to this journey of self-acceptance. So I was wondering, what were some of your own formative experiences that led you to pursuing a career in the arts that helped shape your trajectory and also the direction of Mustache?
Oh, well, thank you for all the words. To jump into that, I mean, there were so many, like in my life, there were so many milestones, like markers. You know, there was a version of Miss Martin in my life. I actually was an English teacher. I had an English teacher, and we had to perform scenes. Death of a Salesman, I played the mom in a scene with our classmates, and I guess I like committed really hard, and when people realized that when the class realized that I was playing the mom, they started laughing, but I don't really remember it. I don't remember that part, but my teacher, Miss Oliver, afterwards she said that, you know, you were really in it. Like when people were laughing, like you didn't even like flinch. And I guess I was just in it. It was just like, it was like an experience. It was like something that like kind of like I felt and I was there. And then she said you should try doing, you should try out for the acting, like the advanced acting classes in my high school. And so that was a really pivotal, that was like the first time I ever thought like maybe I could have like do something creative. And so it was really like that experience and that teacher there to be that like, I guess a cosign, like to say, hey, like you should do this. And that was massive at that age. It was like world shattering, and it was huge. And so that's one really big one that I think about a lot. And the teacher in the movie is sort of based off of that teacher that I had. Even though circumstances are a bit different, but the spirit behind it is kind of like from that experience of like that first time of thinking like that I could be a part of something creative and expressive. And so it's like, and I think probably every filmmaker or every actor, every artist has that moment in their life at some point.
The opening of your film is so epic, with these extreme close-up shots of his face, and I really love the sound mixing throughout the film with the recurring motif of the razor, which kind of comes to haunt and return to Ilyas in these high moments of stress and anxiety. And I also really appreciated the editing throughout the film, especially in that pivotal scene where Ilyas and his father fight over the bicycle, and we see these really fast shots of him remembering, thinking about the masculine figures in his life and how the mustache and the falling of his father's toupee becomes this really big, shocking reveal toward their relationships. So I wanted to ask, leading to your directorial debut, you've worked as an editor for various projects and directed a short film. And with the use of Ilyas's voiceover, as we're caught up to speed on his life, we get introduced to his sense of place in the world. So what was the journey to getting this film made like, and more specifically, the process like in writing the script with an eye toward directing and drawing on your various experiences?
I think, yeah, I mean, my background as an editor definitely had a major impact even in the writing and in the script, and like just like how we got into scenes, how we got out of scenes, and like where the economy of like how we could move through the story, and what we should hang on and what we should, like, that was kind of like most of that was out like in the script that way. And I think that's probably from years of cutting other people's stuff and feeling like, oh, there's fat here and there's fat there, and like trying to keep everything really concise. So I think I've definitely brought that spirit into the into the script, and then like translating that. It was very useful when you're under a lot of pressure on set to shoot the scenes that you need to shoot that day, with a child actor where you get limited hours every day to shoot. And just trying to, get the movie in the can. So it's very useful to turn on that editing brain and think, okay, well, what's the bare minimum we need from this scene for it to work, and where do we put the camera to do that? And I think that's from years of working on other people's films as an editor. Definitely like switches you into a different gear, and then you can problem solve in a different way, and so it's very helpful. And then in the edit itself, we were like discovering the film. So you mentioned the razor sound, and even like the flash cuts. All of that was sort of built in the edit. That wasn't specifically in the script. Those things were kind of in, like, those visuals existed in the script in different places and different times, but the idea to use them as points of anxiety and points of like a window into his inner life was something discovered by the editor and producers, and as we like brainstormed how to like bring people more and more into the shoes of this character and into the experience of this character. And so those are things that, it's just the way a movie is made. It's like, that old saying, which is like the movie's written 3 times, once in the script, another time during production, and then a 3rd time during the edit. So you're kind of like rewriting all the time.
Your film harks back to classic teenage coming-of-age films, and Mustache in this way feels both nostalgic and fresh, as it paves way to become a new classic in the genre. And so the film feels so dynamic and inspired in many regards, and also it's very intertextual with how Ilyas leans on pop culture to inform his worldview, and also, for example, his watching TV dads to make up for the silences between him and his father. How did you prepare to direct this film, and what were some sources of inspiration that guided you along the way?
There were so many things I had to prepare for. I feel like I had to prepare emotionally for this film quite a bit, like just to get, just to realize, like, writing the script is one thing, and like pouring your heart and your soul into like a script is one thing, and then having to physically be in a space with actors to recreate things that are inspired by your memories, that are inspired by real feelings, inspired by things you went through. That's something else. That takes a different kind of preparation. It's not like a technical preparation. It's more just realizing what you're in for, and trying to stay grounded, trying to stay rooted in memories, and trying to infuse whatever is happening with actors, whatever's happening in a real space with those memories. And that was, inspired by, and then like the kind of daily reminders I had while we were shooting it were the pictures, like my old photos, family albums. Like I had a lot of picture, like reference material from my own childhood, like to look at all the time, and also to like show department heads, and to show actors, to show everybody who worked on the film, to kind of coalesce into a vibe, coalesce into like a mood. And that was really important. I think it's like, if you can really stay grounded in the original inspiration for why you wanted to make something, you can that juice, that spirit will like really carry through into the final product. But it takes a lot of inspiration to make it through, because through the process of making film, things get diluted, things get there's compromises you have to make, there's cuts you have to make, And so your spirit has to be very strong at the top to kind of survive all the way through, and that was like a constant trying to like stay in it throughout the whole process, all the way through picture lock. So yeah, it's difficult to stay inspired, I think, through the length of through the life of an entire film, which is years.
Yeah, I really love what you said about sustaining that spirit, and also how it sounds like in telling a story about Ilyas trying to find his place in various communities, that the making of this film also created a community in a way. So telling this story about Ilyas crossing various thresholds, the main journey following his move from a private Islamic high school to public school, very much felt like an analog to the story of immigration, or somewhat his life following in the shadow of the story of his parents. I really like the tracking shot of Ilyas as he's walking through the doors of the high school, and following the speech from his father where he says, "Don't forget yourself," and then he sees his reflection in the trophy case, and how you captured the anxiety that he feels as he's surrounded by this drone of voices around him, as he, through the arts, comes to find his own voice. I couldn't help but feel worried on Ilyas's behalf that he'd encounter bullying and perhaps instances of racism or violence even. I think that was just the expectation and fear that I had going into his transition. And it's there when he's waiting to get picked up and the two kids nearby say, of course that's his mom. And you've talked about what it meant for you to set this movie during the 90s. So I was wondering if you could talk about the challenges or aims of recreating this time period for you as a storyteller.
Wow. Yeah, the challenges of creating this time period. I mean, there's like the practical, the just the nuts and bolts, the on the ground reality of trying to create the 90s, which is you got to have cars, you got to have just like everything has to be time like period appropriate, which is a challenge. Like if you're shooting outside, if you're shooting wherever, like every location had to be kind of like make sense for that. So that's like the nuts and bolts is quite complicated, sometimes limiting in some way, and especially on a modest budget to try to like keep it everything appropriate. But then creatively, honestly creatively it's kind of easy for me. That part of it was easy because I have such vivid memories of that time, like that my adolescence is quite still vivid to me, of like what things felt like, what things looked like, and so reaching back to the 90s and like thinking about how things felt and looked like is kind of easy because it's like it's just really accessible, and it's not like something I have to do research on necessarily. Just kind of like that's more of like a fun thing to do actually, but it's hard to do in practice, like in terms of like production. it's kind of a nightmare actually, probably, but I think it had to be that way too for this.
Yeah, those instant messaging split screen sequences really took me back, having grown up in the 90s. And I love the way that it conveys such intimacy and kind of a space that's only there for Ilyas and Yasmin. And I noticed that we're actually, the set piece for that split screen between them is back in their classroom in Cordova.
Yes.
So it feels particularly gutting when she logs off and her scene cuts to black. I really love the moments where we see what they look like as they're actually sitting at their respective computer desks and on the other sides. And I understand that you, earlier today, you met with various students through HIFF who watched and discussed the film with you. So I wanted to ask how you think this film's depiction of teenage culture then speaks to contemporary teenage life now.
That's a tough question because I'm not a teenager, but I think I can only hypothesize about this, like how they relate maybe, but I think the universal theme of searching for kind of acceptance, both outwardly and inwardly, maybe are even more pressing today in an age of like Instagram and all this like social media in general. I can only imagine it's more difficult to not feel compared to other people, not have to like feel social pressures in maybe in a more like acute way. But I think that's kind of probably where the movie joins probably the most with this generation. And I think that's kind of Ilyas's journey in the movie, and I feel like that core journey is still very relevant, even if the methods of communication and the way things are quite different. But yeah, I don't know. That's how I think about it.
Speaking of teenagers, I wanted to ask you what it was like working with Arthav Verma, who plays Ilyas, because so much of the emotional resonance of the film rests on his face, his body language, and as he comes into performance arts, that monologue scene from Back to the Future, where we have like a slow zoom onto his stage area compared to his opening presentation about the Stargates, his reaction to Asim and Liz at the house party, and of course the final performance piece, which is awkward, cringy, but overall incredibly courageous.
Sorry, what was the question? I lost the question.
What was it like working with me?
Oh, what was like? Yeah. Atharv, yeah. He was incredible. You know, he was such a special. He's such a special young actor. We had so many people. I mean, we had so many actors that were considered for the role. A lot of brilliant young actors, and what stood out to me about him was just his emotional intelligence, his sensitivity, and just what he could convey with his eyes. And I think those things were it's kind of what makes a performance work, especially in a film like this with a young actor. We really experienced the world not only through him, but just there's so much of the film is just his face as a reflection of what he's experiencing in the moment. And so we need to feel what he feels, and I think that was critical. And so working with him was really like on a practical level. He had an acting coach that worked a lot with a really great acting coach in Toronto that worked with him. And in rehearsals, he did a lot of script analysis actually, like really going through and like talking through. And then when we were working together, it was a lot of just talking about circumstances, and he would find his own way into it. And at a certain point, I was just getting out of his way. I think once he understood the character, it became his own. And I didn't. It was more like, hey, could you do that faster, maybe, or could it's like you would maybe like that's the direction, and not like once he got, I was just letting him do his thing, and kind of getting out of his way. So. This is a special thing. I mean, I don't know. I've never experienced that kind of hands-offness with a child actor. I've worked with like a number of child actors before on other things. So I don't know. He's just special. Really, really, really special actor. I think he's got a career ahead of him if he chooses to pursue it.
I have one more question before we move toward audience Q&A for a little bit. The subtext of the film throughout is Ilyas's father, Hamid's failing business, and the implications that it has around the confrontation that they have after the bike falls out of the trunk. It's not that he was so much expelled, but perhaps that the father, for financial reasons, wanted to put him into public school. And we see a glimpse of Hamid talking with his wife about their eldest daughter and perhaps not being able to send her to the college that she wants to attend because of these reasons. So when Hamid, by the end of the film, tells Ilyas, in referring to his performance piece, you seemed so free, I felt like there was a lot of subtext packed into those words. And also the look on his face as he was taking in the performance, it felt like there was a mixture of him being moved, but also trepidation of sorts. So I wanted to ask you what you think freedom would feel like for Hamid, Ilyas, and perhaps the rest of the family beyond the ending of the film.
Yeah, that's amazing that you pick up on all of that, because those were like those were conversations about what like that scene at the end. There are many versions of it. Like what Hamid says to his son had changed many times, and trying to figure out like what is how does he perceive his son now that he's seen this performance, and like what has changed for him. And I think the way I think about it is Hamid is trapped in his own set of insecurities related to his career, related to his hair, related to like the way the community kind of sees him, and maybe the community doesn't take him seriously in some ways, and so he's sort of trapped in the expectation of what he needs to be and what he needs to do. And watching his son do something so kind of it's like almost like out of the bounds of, or out of the constraints of like what everybody else is doing, just is like, it's almost like he wishes he could be that in that moment. And that idea of being kind of free and open is something maybe not afforded to him in the position that he's in. And for probably good reason, because he's the head of a family, he's got a lot of responsibilities, he's got a lot of pressures. So but I think it's like a moment of understanding, a moment of connection. That's how I see that.
All right, so I think we have a little bit of time for audience Q&A.
Yeah, here.
So at the end of the film, did you plan to like were you thinking of, was he gonna shave his beard or was he not?
Yeah.
Or did you just not know and just wanted to end the movie, or?
That's a good question. A lot of people ask this question. So okay, well, what do you think? What would you want to happen? Let's start with that.
I think that he wouldn't shave it after he made the play, and that he should kind of embrace the mustache.
Yeah. So great. I think we agree. So this is what I'll say about that, is that there's like, I think there was something limiting about both choices in terms of like the storytelling. If he were to shave the mustache, it feels like it may betray a lesson he's just learned. But if he doesn't shave the mustache, I feel like maybe he hasn't fully crossed over into like a threshold of adulthood. And I think him in that like liminal in-between space is kind of like the end of this journey, and not necessarily having to go one way or another. That was sort of the thought process behind like, I think the movie is over. Actually, the movie is really over when he connects with his father. Like that, the movie is actually over. This last moment is him savoring childhood for one more moment. And for me, that's the end. That's how I think about it. I'm just one person though. Like I'm one interpreter of it, but like that's how I think about it.
So if that's true, why didn't you end the movie when he connected with his father?
We want to see this, I think.
Okay.
He needs to have a moment to digest, I think. I don't know. But we can take that into consideration. Maybe. It's called in film, like if you study film, they would call it denouement. Like it's like the come down. Like it's like there's like a movie has like a yeah, like it's like what happens right after that. So.
more of a technical question, but you have like a lot of unique lens shots, like distortion and a lot of like anamorphic style. Why did you use those unique style lenses?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So we actually shot on vintage lenses that were rehoused. So they were actual, like we wanted some kind of a vintage look for the film. We wanted it to feel kind of like memory-ish and kind of like something from the past. And we found our like halfway point between that. But yeah, we shot on these a great set of anamorphic lenses, some optical, some spherical as well, but mostly anamorphic lenses that were rehoused and like actual vintage lenses. So it was like really to just get people into like just the flavor of yeah, like that this was like almost like made during the time period that we're telling the story in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick sort of two-part question. It's interesting in the casting that you had. Can you discuss a little bit about the choices you made and whether you got those particular name actors first, and did that help your project move forward, or
okay, yeah.
or how that worked in terms of the biz? And then secondly,
Yeah.
did you film it partially in Ontario?
Yeah,
Ontario? The whole thing,
Most
or-
of it was shot in Toronto.
Toronto,
Yeah,
okay.
We shot exteriors in San Jose, California.
Okay.
But yeah, so casting. Casting is a very interesting thing. I learned a lot making this film about like how movies get put together, and it's my first feature.
Which came first?
Yeah, it's a lot of chicken and egg though, because sometimes, like for example, Alicia Silverstone, she joined the project like while we were shooting, so it was like things were happening. We were still casting that role. She had read the script and really liked it, and then so that's an example of kind of like a name actor coming in, like it's already going. Like either way, we were gonna make the movie, but obviously it was a big deal, and it was a huge just blessing for her to say yes. But and then in other cases that can be that can help you get fine. I mean, for other films, I mean, our film maybe is different because all of our leads were kind of not names. I mean, Rizwan Manji is known, Schitt's Creek, and like, people know who he is, and that certainly had an effect on possibly like getting the money together and all that stuff. But we just were in a unique position where we knew that the kid was going to be like a discovery. He was going to be somebody probably people haven't seen before. So the expectation is different for our film, kind of. Like, it's like, it wasn't relying on some lead star.
It was relying on the kid.
Yeah, I was relying on the kid, and maybe finding some recognizable faces in the supporting cast, which is kind of what we ended up doing. And that was always kind of like the strategy, I guess, with a film like this, which is like, how many like famous 13-year-old South Asian kids are you gonna, so it's like, it's not like people expect it to be that, based on the script. And so which is great actually, because then you're actually more free to just find the right kid for the part, instead of having to like be like make this like weird compromise where you're like, all right, we got to get this in. So I kind of like that actually, and then it was a lot of fun to cast and to imagine like who could play these characters and how they could be in there, and actually also like Misha Shafi, who plays the mom. She's actually quite famous in Pakistan. She's a quite a famous singer actually, and she has also acted. She's acted in a Mira Nair movie some years ago, and so she was she's kind of like a dream casting for me, because she's just a really good actor, and she like, I think she knocked it out of the park. Like the rest of the cast, I mean, we got really lucky. A lot of it is just getting lucky too. I don't know how to, because the schedules and the whether they're available or not, and whether even if they like it, they can't do it because they're already committed to something else or whatever. Like that is like the matrix, the Rubik's cube of that is like so complicated that that like when a movie does come together, like they say, it's kind of a miracle. Like just the fact that all those people are available to just like show up. So I just count my blessings with like this cast, and we're so lucky to have them. Oops.
Are there cultural nuances that you might explain for that last part where he did the performance?
Are there cultural nuances? Kind of, maybe. I think, I think, I'm trying to think of one thing. I mean, there is an idea, like, so there's like, there's sort of like a religious concept, like, in Islam, like, there is this like idea of purification of the heart being like a core aspect of there's a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that, you know, if the heart is sound, then the entire self is sound. So it's like there's like a focus on the heart, and I think it's like I just thought it would be like funny and weird if he kind of took that literally, and that's sort of what he like made this like weird paper mache heart thing, and it's kind of like weird. It's like anatomically correct, you know. I just thought that'd be weird, but it is sort of root. There's like a real like idea there, and also there's like the prayer, like the little brother like unwraps it in this like prayer rug. It's like what Muslims pray on, and that specific prayer rug was one that like I found it when I was in Toronto, but it's like but it was one that like my mom had the same exact one, and I just was like, oh, that's cool. Like it's like anything that felt like really familiar to me, or felt like something that I felt like growing up, or something I recognized. I tried to like add that into the film, so it's kind of like I don't know if that's like a cultural nuance or just my own like things I gravitate towards, and wanted to like make sure there's like a texture there and things like that. But I hope that answers. There's probably more in the performance, but maybe that's a longer conversation.
All right, thank you so much, Imran. This was such a special evening to spend with you. And thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, everyone. This is such a pleasure.
And please remember to tell your friends and family that there will be another showing of Mustache on Wednesday.
Yeah. And if you enjoyed the film, feel free to vote. That'd be great. Thank you.